Hi everybody, this is Rachel, and welcome to week 3. I've decided for my intro video, I'm actually gonna switch it up and do basically a mini lecture on the PGI, which is the Occupational Interest Assessment that you all be doing. So I wanted to go more in depth about this because the results that they give you are not necessarily self-explanatory, and there's a lot of pieces to this, and so I just want to make sure you're able to understand what your results mean. Okay, so as you may remember from the theories portion of this course, or as you may review as you're writing your theories paper, Holland had his model of vocational interests that was in this hexagon of realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. So they were on this big hexagon, and I guess I'm not going to try to draw it with my mouse because that wouldn't work very well, but you've seen it before and you'll see it again later in this slide. So the thing with that hexagon is it does not necessarily have to be split up into these 6 types. So Prediger came along and he said that you can divide Holland's model up on 2 different dimensions. One that ranges from interest in people to interest in things, and then another one that ranges from interest in data to interest in ideas. And so that sounds really vague right now, but I'll show you on the picture once we get to that part. So basically, as I said, Holland's 6-type hexagon structure is kind of arbitrary, and you can chop that up in any sort of amount of interests. So moving along. So right now we have these 2 dimensions, people, things, and data, ideas. So Tracy and Round said there's also this other dimension which goes to prestige. And so by prestige, they are kind of talking about the kind of effort, training, and responsibility involved in that job. So it's a little different from what we may think of as prestige, but kind of similar. So for some people, prestige matters a whole lot. They really want a very prestigious job, or they really want a very not prestigious job, and other people it doesn't matter at all. So when you have these 3 dimensions, you have this globe. So that's why it's called the personal globe inventory. So this circle, this would be kind of like Holland's circle and Prediger's circle that has these 2 axes, and that's sort of like at the equator of this globe. And then you imagine this going up for high prestige and down for low prestige. So there's so many parts of this, and that's why it can be a little difficult to interpret what your results mean. But one thing to keep in mind is, so for people whose prestige doesn't matter as much to them, the other interests matter to them more. Whereas other people might be like very interested in just prestige, and so the actual category of interest may not matter as much. So moving on. Another thing with PGI is that your profile or the answers it spits out are customized. So everyone gets this circle with your interests, and everyone gets a main circle with interests, and then if you've indicated that prestige is very important for you, you might also get some more half circles to look at. And so as you will notice when you're doing the PGI assessment, it asks you what activities you're interested in and also what activities you feel like you're good at. So usually those are pretty correlated, but if they're really different from each other, you will also get another line on your basic circle. Alright. So that can tell you something about your results. So moving on to what all the areas are. So you got your basic interest circle. And you can see these two axes. And you can also see the REASEC and how they fit into things. And then, even more, there are 8 basic interest types that are mapped onto here. So some of these are the same, like artistic is artistic, but like I is split up into like nature, outdoors, or mechanical. And I'm not going to read out all the descriptions of these types, but here they are for you. And also in the PowerPoint, I will attach this PowerPoint to Blackboard, and it also has like a couple examples of what could fall under each of these types. So here's an example of what you might get. This is actually my own example. But you can see you have this circle, and then the red thing are my results. So the further away from the center means that I have higher interest in that category. So I have a higher interest in nature and outdoors. If you have a low interest, it's closer to the center of the circle. So like lower interest in managing. And then you also have this blue line that if you sum up kind of the general direction of where all your scores are going, that is a summary of that. So mine points towards mostly nature outdoors, but kind of also towards the mechanical. So this middle section is gray because that is where most people score. So if you're outside of the gray, that means you're especially high or especially low in that area compared to other people. So that's a good thing to pay attention to. So like for me, you can see I'm especially high in nature outdoors, artistic, data processing. I'm not especially low on anything. But some people just don't fall especially high or especially low on things. So this can be a good visual guide, but you'll also get a set of numbers to help you get more exact answers, or if you're just not a very visual person. I haven't seen anybody get this, but maybe if you don't have much differentiation at all between the different interests, they'll give you a simpler graph, just because there's no point including all the details. So it might be something more like this. Again, I haven't seen this happen, but it might happen. So maybe if you don't have much experience doing things, or you just kind of like a lot of things equally, maybe this will happen. And this slide is just a description of these main axes. Alright, so in case you wanted things to get more complicated, this is where the globe part gets into things. So when you're looking at this high prestige one, pretend that the PGI is the Earth and influence is the North Pole, and you're looking down, and these things are at the equator. So you'll see influences at the very North Pole, and these things like financial analysis is a combination of influence and managing and social facilitating. Then the low prestige, basically the opposite. So pretend you're looking up, and manual work is a South Pole, and again, all these things are back at the equator. So it's just kind of hard to depict 3 dimensions in this format. And so this just describes prestige a little more. So I'm going to skip over things a little bit. So don't want this to get too long, but so if you indicated that prestige is really important to you, it might spit out some of these types of charts, where it's like this is the North Pole, this is the equator, and then you cut the Earth in half and are looking at this. And you interpret this in the same way as you interpreted the main circle. So like you have your summary line, and the ones closer to the edge are ones you have more interest in. And here are some descriptions of what each of these things mean. And again, in the PowerPoint side, there are some examples. And like I said, a lot of times what we're interested in is related to what we feel like we're good at. I know it's a little hard in this questionnaire because sometimes they ask about things you've never done before, so it's kind of hard to know. But just make your best guess. So for this example, if this person likes the things that their blue scores went towards, but they feel competent in things that their dotted green line went towards. So maybe this will happen if you're in the change of your career. So this person feels like they're very competent at helping, but they don't love it. They love nature outdoors. They only feel medium competent in that. Alright, so I'm actually gonna pause the video here because this recorder will only let me record 15 minutes at a time, and I'm at the 12-minute mark, so let's do a pause.